Samso. Today we're at the Wagga Wagga homestead just out of Yalgoo. We're here with Venture Minerals on a field trip. I've got Andrew Radonjic and Mel Ashton here who are on a field trip to check things out, and we decided to have a coffee Samso out here in the outback. So welcome Andrew and Mel.
Thank you.
Mel, you're the chair of Venture.
Yep.
Maybe your first time at Coffee Samso, just give us a rundown of who you are and what you are.
Yeah, so Mel Ashton's my name. I'm a Perth boy, so I've lived here most of my life, done a little bit of work overseas. Chartered accountant by training, was a receiver and liquidator for 25 years, and about 20 years ago I sort of decided to become a company director, and that's principally what I've been doing since I made that decision, and got involved with Venture Minerals about when it got first floated, over 16 years ago. So it's been a long time chairman of the company.
Okay, and we drove around today. How'd you feel with that? What's your thoughts?
Look, I think it's really valuable for non-executive directors to get out and have a look and see how the team performs in the field. The process that they go through, how thorough that is regarding the documentation of what's coming out from the activities that they're doing, to be walked through, the different soils that you see coming out by the experts that we have on our team. Look, it's just it's invaluable. You can't replicate that any other way than by getting out there and going through the motions with them.
Yeah, some of the things that we'll talk about in a while, I think it's a great thing for you guys, for yourself to see what how it's going to work and how it could work.
Yeah, definitely.
Look, Andrew, it's been a while, probably nearly a month since we had a chat. Give us an update on what's happening in Jupiter.
Well, at Jupiter, we recently announced and I think we spoke about this last time, about a 300-hole program to take what we call stage 2 of the resource definition drill out, and it's really to drill the Jupiter target, which is a geophysical target only, and it is, I remind people, it's open in all directions, the mineralisation, but we're sort of constraining ourselves because we just don't know how big this is. And there's about nearly 300 holes we got approval for to drill within that target area. So, this morning we watched hole 290 being drilled. So we're very close to the end now, and that's happened way ahead of schedule. Like, we've drilled it almost in half the time. So, that'll be done next week, and we'll, obviously we'll inform the market once that's completed. But as with all drilling, you never know when you're going to drill that last hole, because there may be a breakdown, there might be rain events, etc. But we're very, very close to completing it, and we're way ahead of schedule, which is great because it'll allow investors a continuation of news flow and results. Because we're due very soon for that last batch of results, and maybe by the time this goes to air, those results will be out. And if that's the case, then probably 2 to 3 weeks later, the first batch of results from this drilling campaign will be coming out. So it's pretty exciting the way we've been able to drill it quickly, cheaply, cost effectively, as a consequence, and that means the news flow just continues being available for investors, and the end result of all that is, as we do all the work, is that we'll end up with our maiden JORC resource probably towards the back end of Q2. But maybe even a little bit earlier now because of the speed in which this drilling has occurred.
I've spoken to a lot of REE guys over the last couple of years. How big do you think your resource could get? You mentioned that it's open sort of in all directions as well. So how big do you think this could be? Well,
one thing I did forget to mention was that we picked up some more land as well. We had another 361 square kilometres, so an increase of 36%. And if I talk about just the 40 square kilometre part, and I just talk about the higher grade, 20 to 30 metres running over 2,000 ppm, most of our holes have got that in. So with 40 square k's times, let's say 20 metres times a density of 2, and you've got 1.6 billion tonnes. Now, I'm not going to say we're going to get all of that, but we expect a very, based upon the drilling we've done, results so far, people can make do their own judgments, but we will get most of that. So, we would be expecting probably close to 1 billion tonnes at, plus 2,000 ppm. But, we still got to get an independent sign-off to do that. Looks pretty good. 10 kilometres north of Jupiter, we had 45 metres at 1,500 ppm with 15 metres at 2,100 ppm within. And we picked up the land. There was a gap sitting between that tenement and the Jupiter tenement. We now, as part of that acquisition, when we picked up that ground, we've added that. So, like today we drove from the road over the gas pipeline, a couple of k's in, well, there's actually 2 gas pipelines. One was next to the road and one was a bit later on, another spur line. And then we drove those 20 to 30 kilometres on the bush track. These are tracks that the pastoralist uses, and we drove straight to the drill rig. So the access, all that is on venture ground, so it's unencumbered access. So, and that's, and we flew the drone up there today, and you can see that it's vast. There's nothing there. The vegetation is scrubby. There's hardly a tree, anything above, say, 3 metres if you're lucky, and there's nothing in all directions. So, we've got to do drilling on all those other tenements as we've got to maintain them through expenditure. Not the new tenements we just did because they're fresh, just on application, but there's another 900 odd square kilometres which we need to get drilling done soon. So we'll come back and we'll drill some more holes, either to follow up or some holes which didn't go deep enough, didn't get to the fresh rock for either mostly due to the fact that the rig couldn't drill deep enough, didn't have enough power to get down deep enough. So we've got a few holes we've got to probably repeat, push down a little bit deeper, but it'll come back and do those other holes and push a few more deeper. And we could have another Jupiter scenario or something potentially even better sitting on another tenement. So I don't know. It's hard to speculate. So that's why we're focused on the 40 square kilometres. And even with the 40 square kilometres, you start running the numbers on a 1 square kilometre, you could have 30 million tonnes, 30 to 50 million tonnes sitting within that alone. So, you need a few square kilometres of that, and you've got 100 million tonnes. Got a 10-year mine life for a 10 million tonne per annum operation. That's a big operation. So, yeah, you've got to be very careful about getting sucked into the enormity of it all, because we drove today. We drove from north to south, and you're going, holy shit, it's
something that we talked about, after when we got back and we're having a cup of coffee in the mess over there. We've got to be pretty strategic about how we go from here, and we'll talk about that amongst ourselves on the board when we get back, and we'll obviously try and focus in on what Andrew said. Is some really high grade, high ground, good ground, and see if we can get something out of that, and instead of taking a scattergun approach and firing off all across such a massive parcel of land.
But this first pass program will give us a good even spread of data, and then we can pick and choose. And as the met starts coming in, and we start getting a bit of a feel, what's the recoveries, the costs of that recovery process, the grade, the strip ratio, all those sort of things. You come in and, I like to personally run, a financial model and own the first resource and get an idea what optimises where. So all of a sudden we go, well, hang on, and use that as a targeting tool about what's the most economic, and say pit 1 is going to be here and pit 2 might be here, pit 3, but maybe depending on the size of that pits, you only focus on one or two. Yeah. And it's like even in gold, like you go many places like Jundee. I'll draw Jundee's got many deposits within the Jundee project, and it's like you're picking the eyes out the best ones to go first. That's an example. But I think every great discovery has its parts and better parts to work within, and I've worked on more on the gold side of things but the rare earth will have they'll have similarity on that basis, because it's basically about the economics of the project and the best way to get the capex down, get it easy to start. If you are going alone, who knows, we might be providing mill feed for Iluka, which is only 250 kilometres away, or it might be at Mount Weld, and today we saw on the bitumen trucks, quads going past, or triples every 10 minutes, backwards and forwards, so that road's well catering for mining operation on a haulage basis. So, we could drive up to that road and go into Bitumen Road all the way to Mount Weld if we wanted to. Or to Kalgoorlie even, to go straight into the refinery, depending on the product we produce. Or, if we've got ionic clays, then, we produce, a concentrate or that we send to a value-add plant. But those value-add plants are within trucking distance of where we are. So, yeah, look, it's we've got a lot of data to collect, and once we get an initial even playing field information, where it'll sort of pick itself to a degree. It won't be, I like this spot. It won't be a sort of a qualitative choice. It'll be based upon putting in all the necessary initial data, and it'll just do more work and infill that area and sort of confine something into something which is bite-sized, instead of trying to eat the whole elephant in one swoop. It'll be just focus on that, and my God, 100 million tonnes is a lot. And if you're talking about being within 1 billion tonnes or more, then it's only a reasonably small fraction.
I mean, when I was out there yesterday and flying the drone around, and I mean, it is, as you say, quite a big scale. Is there potential for those higher grade cores that's undiscovered? I mean, maybe too early for you to know, but it is a big area, as you say, and your exploration is giving you any certain clues?
Well, look, we were driving past, and me and Mel said, "Oh, we'll just jump out the car and have a look." And we looked at the bottom of hole samples. So now we're sort of getting, good ideas to get bottom of hole samples. And we've been doing, 6 metre comps or 2 metre comps if there's mineralisation, or now 4 metre comps, because the assaying cost is more than the drilling.
Yeah.
And they've been working quite well. We were using a portable XRF to sort of pick these zones, but now we've kind of got our eye in. And the bottom of the hole, we might have some higher grades, and you might have the grades sitting in your clays, and then it may touch the bottom, it may not, and it'll start leading into, and you start getting clues from because you're doing almost whole rock chemistry about what sort of rock it is, and we were starting to see some variability just in a handful of holes we looked at. Oh, that's much darker, that's much lighter, even simple stuff like that. There might be, there's a magnetic anomaly here. So we use MagSUS, and we're determining that some areas are more magnetic than others, and you can use that as we're starting to see that used as a cut-off between transported and the actual clay. Just on MagSUS alone, just in case geologists can't pick it exactly right. And it's sort of, again, it's about adding all this data together. If we've got this alkaline intrusion, it might be a cyanide. We don't think it's a carbonatite. And I think I mentioned this before. In Canada, there's I think it's Tall Lake has got it's a big, massive cyanide intrusion, and it's got an iron-rich portion, and that's got scandium associated with it, which is kind of like those borderline rare earths. It's it kind of is, sometimes it is, but it's in the iron-rich part of the cyanide. There's strong scandium mineralisation, so you might find things like that, but they haven't popped up yet. Look, Noel, this was on a map, just pink, on a map before. No one knew about it, and I was talking to Mel, we were driving up there yesterday. We had a few hours to talk about various things, and I said, it's no one knows what's out there because no one's been out there to drill. And there's a guy drilled these 2 holes before the group Sentinel, who we did the JV with on Radonjic, which has become Jupiter. He had some very coarse geological data. He said, there's a couple of gravity stations, there's a bit of an anomaly, there's a bit of a mag anomaly. Mag wasn't too bad. He did a little bit of MM iron, and he concluded he had a carbonatite. Now, based on very little information, so the chance of being accurate are a lot less. And he drilled and he didn't find a Mount Weld, but he did find is high-grade clay-hosted mineralisation, which at the time wasn't a thing. It wasn't popular. Wasn't even though China's been producing it for decades, he didn't recognise that opportunity. But then we drilled more holes. We found it's quite extensive. So this has the potential to yield lots of very good, pleasant surprises. And each time we drill more holes, and again, in my experience over nearly 4 decades, is that if you drill more holes and you get better results, it's usually a good sign that you're onto something that's going to be economic, which is the important thing. And I think it's, if you actually, like the 48 metres at 3,025 ppm, like the intersection we've got, which is an Australian highest intersection of rare earth clays in Australia. Then you've got over 5,000 ppm NdPr, neodymium praseodymium. So that's a record, internal record, not an Australian record. And then don't be surprised if we drill and get better results. We've cracked 2% over 2 metres. We've got 4 metre samples now, so it might be a little bit harder to crack, but you might get 4 metres at 1.5%, or you're starting to get more of those plus 1% ones. And then, depending on the metallurgical process, you might be able to upgrade that by 5 or 10 times. Like I said to people before, this scale of this thing's so big, we could have some ionic clay sitting at the top with 100 million tonnes or 50 million tonnes of it. We wouldn't even know until we get all that work completed. But the scale of it means it will take a little bit of time to realise the best opportunities in those areas, but we're just trying to get under those as quickly as possible. But this very fast drilling campaigns accelerated that time frame quite dramatically, and it'll allow us to get to that point quicker. But getting the PhD student in geometallurgy, focus on that, and just starting to get people with the right skills, building our team up, and then we will unlock this sooner rather than later.
I mean, from the market point of view, I guess you've established good width, you've established good grades, you've established, but most likely good potential for scale. A lot of people are still asking, what are your met like? I kind of, over the many projects I've looked at, they're kind of fairly consistent. Would you fall into that basket, or do you think you're a bit different?
Look, how many ionic projects are there in Australia?
Yeah, not too many.
I think there's one, and that's in Tasmania, bizarre as it may seem. It's sitting underneath a bauxite deposit. Yep. So this is the ABX near Campbelltown not far out Launceston. It seems quite modest in size, but it looks like it's ionic. So it's kind of mining underneath bauxite, which is interesting in itself. But everyone else seems to have to have some some of them have a lower, should I say, a weaker acid attack. Some have a stronger. Yes, you will get it out if you use any acid. You will eventually get it out, but obviously it's all about the costs, and that's the ionics really focused about the costs, and that sort of, and which is fair enough. But at the end of the day, Mount Weld is not ionic. It's a carbonatite. It's high grade, yes, but the vast majority of that grade is all the lights, which aren't worth a lot. So at the end of the day, they've come out and said, we're looking for clay-hosted deposits because we need the heavies, we need the magnet metals, and that's why the magnet rare earths, the 4 of those, the key, and they are very consistent. Most of these ore bodies are all sitting around that 20 to 25% mark. We're at 23. We've almost gone to 23% very quickly and we've just stayed there. So the more drilling we do, the average just stays at 23%. So we've got that, but there'll be better areas where the whole grade is higher, the percentage will go up. You know, and that's why I said that if you can get 100 million tonnes at that really high grade to go and pay for all your capital, or depending which way you go, and this project, because of the scale that it has, can provide feed for Iluka, have an ionic component, and provide feed for Mount Weld or Linus. We could have 3 scenarios. That's the opportunity, and I think people need to wrap their head around that, because that's quite significant.
I think every project's got its uniqueness. I think Venture has its uniqueness in your location. I do really feel that no matter what the chemistry is or whatever, it seems like it's at that level, acceptable level, but then your location makes it, to me, just very different. That could be the that tips it on the, you know, it work or can't work, you know.
Well, everyone talks about operating costs is important, but capital costs, if you can save on capital, that's also very, very important.
Definitely.
You don't have to go and build it.
Yeah.
It can be a mine, or salt the mine gate, or do a little bit of beneficiation and then truck it then and get exposure to the value add quicker.
You're almost in like a typical mining environment, so it's, for you to get that happening, to me, is like quite easy. I'm not saying it's easy, nothing's easy, but you know.
Well, we'd rather tap into, it's a lot about marketing. They've done the marketing, especially Linus. They've been at it for a couple of decades, so they've secured us. So they know what the supplier wants, and they'll go, okay, well, if we haven't got it, and they're already saying we're looking for more of those clay hosts because the clay's run out. Where are you going to get it from? Well, we'd rather get it from a local supplier.
Yeah.
That'd be ideal, and we're just trying to obviously, you know, present ourselves as that opportunity because of our location. The guys at Eneabba, it comes from mineral sands. It's been sitting there, it's been mined out over, you know, the last few decades, and it sits there, but it's high in thorium uranium. That's because the monazite is like that. That's generally, it is high in uranium thorium. Ours is low in uranium thorium, which is a big tick for not only for the processing for us as a standalone, but as a potential feed supply, just to get. They want the units of neodymium and praseodymium to be there, but they want less radioactivity to try and make it easier to handle. So, and they've shown their cards a little bit by buying into Northern Minerals, but they're 1,000 k's away. We're 250 k's away. So, you know, that's kind of where we think we fit, and you know, Mel's got a very broad network. So, you know, we know people in these organisations.
Yep.
And when the time is right, when we're ready, when we know about what we have a better handle on it, and the maiden resource is going to be a great opportunity for that, then, you know, we'll be able to start talking to these groups and sort of say, well, what do you want? You know, rather than what we've got this, but, you know, they might be only interested in a portion of, or certain portions of it, and because of the scale of it, we can focus on that and provide them that feed sooner rather than later.
So Mel, maybe a question that's more your world in terms of, I know you're involved in White Knight, which you're involved in things like that, but the rare earth industry obviously has gone from a run to not such a good run, but obviously we all know that mining projects it's measured in decades as opposed to a number of years. Yeah. How do you see the market going forward? You know, how do you see Venture taking advantage of that?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and you always got to reflect about, at a particular time, what does the market look like, because that's the situation that you're dealing with. I think, you know, the two vital ingredients that you have to have is you have to have a good project, and I think we're starting to demonstrate that we do have a good project, and then you've got to have a good team, and so that's the other aspect that we're focusing on at the moment. Venture is building a team, and look, there's not a huge amount of experience in rare earths in Australia, but we think there's some people out there who could help us, and we're keen to sort of bring that expertise into the company as well. So if you've got those two fundamentals, I think you're ahead of the pack, and then then it's a matter of educating investors, which is part of this process, about what we have got and what we're trying to do, and if that's a story that they think is compelling, then I think we should be able to attract the right sort of investment and the right sort of people to get behind us, because this will take some time, and we're going to need capital to support the company on the way through. But more importantly, once we land on what we think the project will be, there is going to be a capital component, and we'll need a fair bit of money to get there.
I mean, we're people that have been in the industry for a long time, and we know the ups and downs of the commodity market. For those guys who are going, I might look at taking a position in venture today, how do you measure, or how do you think their exit would look like?
I think the answer to that question depends on what's their reason to invest. So there's going to be people who are in for a short term, which is fair enough. That's their investment philosophy. I think we are going to need some longer term investors to get where we want to go. So as Andrew said, that's about tapping into your network that you've got, and the relationships that you've built for many years over with some really good people who can help you in that regard, not only in Perth and Western Australia, but all around Australia and internationally as well. So
yeah, I think that's very important. I mean, that's where your kind of experience, your decades of working all over the place comes into play. How do you guys, look at the rare earth market, and how do you see it panning out in the next 12 months? I mean, obviously you give that curve a longer run, you're always going to see an upturn, but how do you see that in the next 12 months?
Yeah, look, the rare earth market is it's shown, there's been some positive signs recently. People are thinking that now's the time to go and get into some good stories, so we're trying to highlight ourselves as the sort of the prestige sort of Australian clay hosted rare earth deposit. So Australians love backing their own. That's similar, very patriotic. So if we can present the picture of something that looks like it's going to be the next big thing, or the biggest thing in clay hosted rare earths, and there's a lot of them around, then I think let's put ourselves in that position. So one is, looks like we've got a great asset. Two, we're drilling at a time when drilling companies are ringing me up. This didn't happen 2 or 3 years ago, even 12 months ago, wanting work, so we're getting great rates. So we're just going to keep on producing great results, and the market will turn, and people are predicting that now. And we've got the geopolitical tension between China and the US. The US wants Australia to provide rare earths for it, to replace. Now, trying to permit something in as Mel will know, in the US is hard bloody work at the end of the day. So it's much easier to go and get something done in Australia, especially Western Australia where we are, and especially between, trying to provide feed sources to two existing producers would make it even easier. And that's kind of what we're venture is. We're venture going to be a standalone project. We're not sort of taking it off the table. There might be another player comes in and wants to, maybe we're going to be backed with part of the IRA funding, and just comes in and say, well, we want to build another one, we want to build this, we want to accelerate that. These are all possibilities that are open, but that sort of, it's almost like two separate markets where China's saying, well, hang on, we're not going to give you rare earth concentrate or some carbonate product. We're going to give you a permanent magnet. That's all. We're going to give you a car or an engine, the whole thing. You're not going to get any rare earths from us. And whereas the US goes, no, well, we want to sort of do our own thing. We want to have it, because a lot of that, it's like samarium, for example, is a good example. It's used in solar powered drones. And as one person said, a little bit of rare earths makes everything better. But anyway, it's sort of like, that's the samarium's main use. It's in nuclear reactors as well. but which is obviously could be more popular as well. But it's that sort of strategic use for military applications, or what a special use maybe it's for aerospace applications. That's where a lot of rare earths comes in. Besides just your turbines and your EVs and all that, which will continue to be built. So I just think that it's that geopolitical market where there may be the rare earth market is bloody opaque at the end of the day. So, but if we're supplying rare earths to the US in the form it wants rather than the form it doesn't want from China, then that's a market that we want to feed into. So it's kind of almost a separate scenario. But this is a little bit like the Cold War used to exist between East and West before. So where they had to go and supply internally their own markets. It's just now that China's sort of taken that role of the communist nations of the USSR, etc. So that's the current thinking, but it does change, so I think everyone's starting to see, investors are starting to see, they're wanting to take a position in rare earths. We just need to present them that this is going to be the next big thing in rare earths in Australia, and the clay-hosted stuff variety, which has generally got the higher permanent magnet percentage than these hard rock carbonatites, which are hard to build. And it's not in Africa, it's not in Brazil, it's in Australia. And that's where we want to paint that, and it's tier 1 jurisdiction, all the great place, Western Australia, permitting, infrastructure, federal government support, the location of the road, the pipeline, and we've had no issues in terms of permitting drilling at all. So flora, fauna, native title, these are things that as we do more work we may need to work on, but initially it looks very permittable. The location, there's hardly anyone out there. Here we are, this homestead, we're 50 kilometres away by car. And you go out there and the only people you see out there are us working there. So it's we're not sitting there with farmers wandering around beautiful green pastures, or we're drilling next to a city with an airport on the edge of town, edge of a city. We are middle of nowhere, but in terms of infrastructure, we're actually right next to it, so it's not that bad. It's all this because of all the mining that's happening around WA.
Yeah, and it's accessible. You can get up here from Perth in 5 or 6 hours, as we know. We've just driven up, so it's not as though we have to fly people up and then they have to helicopter in and all that sort of stuff. It's quite easy to get in. So from a cost perspective,
like 230 kilometres from Geraldton.
That's right.
Which is I was surprised how close you were. That's almost like Norseman to Esperance to some degree.
Significant port there.
Yeah. And one of the things is that, people need to understand that none of the new industry is developed by itself. Iron ore didn't have Western Australian government help. We wouldn't have an iron ore industry. The lithium one, you've got to remember that lithium now is the price is low, but at some point in time, the infrastructure's got to come, the rare earth. The funding's already coming in. The funding's already coming in for lithium, and from my talk, my trip to the conference in Canberra last year, it seems that the US government's putting a lot of money in lots of bees and lots of trillions, establishing this new chain for rare earth industry, and I think that's how it needs to be done, because people forget, right? China is a central government. They don't work for economics. They say we want this, and it's driven, right? So, but anyway, that's an interesting story again on a different topic. But what's the news flow for you guys? I've seen the drilling. What's the news flow going forward?
Well, we've got that last batch, which is due any day now, the results. So that's very close, and we've seen the first couple of batches produce some record-breaking results at different levels. But so that'll be out very, very soon. We have obviously results from this first program, which you know, I think I announced that, if I'm mistaken, early March, and here we are, early April, and it's like nearly done. So you know, you're going to start getting results coming through. So, you know, we have smashed the lab with samples, there's no doubt, but I'll break it up into smaller batches and we'll start getting that fed through. So we could get in 2 or 3 weeks' time after the last batch of results, we could get the next batch, first batch from the next round of drilling, and then that will be continuous every couple of 2 or 3 weeks. We'll start getting another set, until, you know, that nearly 300 holes worth of results are through. So there's going to be fairly continuous news flow from that. We'll start getting news flow out of the Met. You know, we've got to get understand the mineralogy, so we've got a PhD to come in and do that, help work it out. So, and then devise a strategy on working on that. And we won't be just working on one solution. We're working on several solutions, looking at, you know, different parts of the weathering profile, the clay profile, saying, you know, you've got to remember that the reason we actually pegged this ground, and you look at one of our earlier announcements, we're at 1800 ppm sitting at the surface, which is probably not far from the gas pipeline, but anyway, it's another story. But what I'm saying is that there is stuff near the surface, so that's a pretty encouraging sign. So a lot of that stuff that Meteoric have is closer to surface in Brazil. So, you know, there's potential there for the ionic. It's clear. So we'll work on different pathway, and the mineralogy will yield that, you know, what's the correct way to go. So that will sneak in amongst that, and we're just talking about Jupiter. So any one of these times, something may come out of Mount Lindsay or Riley, or our JV partners in Chalice down the southwest. We've got and we've got Premier One Lithium, or used to be Sensor, now has become Premier One Lithium. Now that they've done all the corporate work there, and have got themselves set into a new entity with funding. They're hitting the ground running, getting drilling done. So, you know, there's plenty just in Jupiter, but now and again something will come out on those other projects, and you know, that'll keep you know, investors interested in holding venture, and we've had a pretty good track record in terms of liquidity and support, and we're attracting we've got a lot of eyes looking at us at the moment. So any more good news, and I think it'll be positive for the share price.
And you mentioned tin's 28,000 this morning. You know, you never know. So what could turn the corner?
Yes. Well, the tin is. I have been invited to the International Tin Conference to talk about, and this is more about the sustainability part of tin. It's being held in Malaysia, which has been a stronghold for tin production over history, and yeah. Look. The guys at Curtin are beavering away on that at the moment. So, and by the way, they also do some work for in Kalgoorlie. They do work on the Mount Well project as well. So, okay. We just sort of had that discussion when they were over in Tasmania. But yeah, look, that's right. You know, iron ore price goes up and it goes down. Tin price go up and down, and you know, we're a diversified company, and so we're well positioned. But at the moment, Jupiter's our focus. It's because it looks like it's a bit of a monster. It looks like a very serious deposit, and so currently that's our focus.
Yeah. Well, look, to conclude, thanks Mel, thanks Andrew, and we need to thank Kuros and Simone Keynes for hospitality, letting us do this in the homestead.
No, it's been excellent. Really,
yeah. So look, commodities up and down, but I think that we're on the lower end of the curve, and it can only go up, I guess. Just a matter of time. When, I guess. When is the
sooner better.
Sooner better. All right, guys. Thank you.
No, thank you.
Until next time.
Neil.
Thank you.